Okay, we're back with new reporting that you may have missed, but it's going to impact your life about what is going on inside Trump's Justice Department. Federal employees, lawmakers, and voting rights advocates are speaking out about several ongoing efforts that could impact Americans for decades to come. Ken Dilanian has been breaking news on all of this. I want to start with your reporting on the push to look the other way on proposed mergers. One source says, I want to get the quote right, one source says, consumers are getting really screwed and warned it is 10 years of consumer harm that cannot be undone. What more can you tell us?
I'm so glad you're focusing on this. This is a bit of a sleeper story. But, you know, when Donald Trump was elected, it was thought that MAGA was in favor of rigorous antitrust enforcement. They hired somebody who was pretty good to lead that division in the Justice Department. She's been fired, and basically all bets are off. Any merger that anybody wants to do is being greenlit. The staff inside the DOJ is making sort of basic proposals like, hey, if you guys want to merge, you need to divest from this particular sector because it's anti-competitive. These are not controversial things. These are standard antitrust provisions that have been going on through Republican and Democratic administrations. And the people running the Trump Justice Department are saying no, they're opposing all of it. They want the mergers to go through. There's been a lot of reporting about particularly well-connected lawyers hired by certain companies that want to make mergers go through. It doesn't appear to be entirely on the level. And a lot of people that I talk to are very, very concerned about it. And yes, consumers end up paying the price for this.
So I want to talk about that because I get, Dan, the pendulum swinging. In the Biden administration, people that you and I both speak to in the business community were really, really unhappy with Lina Khan. Yep. They felt like Lina Khan was extraordinarily anti-business. So now the pendulum has swung. It's like tons of these companies they're not even using their government relations people. They hire the right lawyer. They can call Howard Lutnick. They can call Scott Bessent. They can call the president directly. But when we just allow absolute M&A willy-nilly, in the short term, it certainly works for these companies. It certainly works for shareholders because you see stocks soar. But this could absolutely hurt consumers, and it could make things cost a whole lot more in this country.
Yeah, no doubt. You know who's a fan of Lina Khan? J.D. Vance. Do you remember that?
I sure do.
That's really interesting. And again, I think it goes back to that sort of populist sentiment.
The original J.D. Vance.
Yeah, exactly. Which one, actually? Hasn't there been like 7?
Actually, that's
right.
true.
I think the test is going to be, forget the media companies, because that is serious. We know that. We've been dealing with that for a very long time. If you want to buy another media company, you want to consolidate it, you want one voice that actually maps towards the administration, you're going to get a deal done. Like, it's that simple. I think the big test is going to be these mega cap tech companies, right? So some of these overlords that we have, whether it's the Amazon, the Meta, the Apple, Google.
Soon to be too big to fail.
Yeah. And when you think about those like 7 or 10 names that you can just look at, I mean, they are like $20 trillion in market cap, and they can buy whatever they want. I mean, they have hundreds of billions of dollars in cash flow. But at some point, I think these companies are going to go back to Washington. They were all standing, all the CEOs on the dais at the inauguration. Remember, they've all just given and given and given. They're going to get what they want. Or will there be a public backlash, that sort of thing? And so we don't know yet. That's probably an after the midterm sort of thing, especially as you get into a sort of lame duck Trump thing. You know what I mean? He might just be like, here, I need this, do whatever you want. And that'll be the sort of thing, that'll be the test, I think. And those deals take a while to close, like normally. But this Paramount deal did not. That thing was fast-tracked and, for good reason. So I just think that we're probably going to have, there's actually another situation. Unless you think the Dems are going to take the Senate, right, you may rush to get some things done, very soon.
Okay, but doesn't this go back to draining the swamp? If the administration is now very, very publicly siding with the biggest, most powerful companies, isn't that the antithesis of draining the swamp?
I mean, Stephanie, for me, the through line in all of these stories is that Donald Trump does not care about the American consumer, whether it is supporting big businesses and these types of huge conglomerates, whether it is tariffs that are affecting American consumers. The bottom line is Donald Trump is probably the most pro-grift president ever. To your point, a person who came into power promising to drain the swamp, fight for farmers, fight for consumer, lower the prices of groceries, none of which have happened. And at the end of the day, when you have the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, stand up in a Pentagon briefing and say, I can't wait for Larry Ellison to take over CNN so that we get favorable coverage. They are telling you openly what is the motivating or animating ideology behind the way they approach all these business decisions.
We have another story I want to... wait.
Well, I was just going to say the quintessential swamp behavior is you hire a fixer to get something done in Washington. It's not on the merits. That's happening at a rampant pace right now.
For sure it is. There's another story that you reported on. Senate Democrats are now demanding to know why the FBI reassigned hundreds of intelligence officials to investigate alleged election fraud in Georgia. What can you tell us here?
So we broke this story that Kash Patel has ordered a massive allocation of resources of FBI analysts to go through these ballots that they seized in Fulton County in Georgia. Again, trying to relitigate the 2020 election. I mean, it's remarkable because these are analysts that normally would be looking at counterterrorism or massive white-collar fraud cases. Right? They're having to devote hours and hours of their lives to this feckless exercise. It just shows how Donald Trump has completely seized control of the FBI and using it to do his business.
Okay, but this is coming after the president ousted remaining members of the bipartisan Elections Assistant Commission. We just talked about it earlier in the show. We've got viewers writing, and here we go. Nancy from South Carolina. How worried should voters be?
So that was mainly an advisory.
People don't think about this.
No.
They just go in to vote and assume it's going to work.
That was an advisory commission to try to help state and locals, manage better elections. I think the bigger concern is about what is going to happen in this election. Are they going to send the FBI to seize ballots or voting machines, asserting that there's foreign interference? Bill Pulte going to show up with armed agents? That's a huge concern right now.
What is your what's your level of concern, or how real do you think it is, Eamon, that now Chuck Grassley, Senate Judiciary Chair, is joining Democrats calling to find out what the heck is Kash Patel doing? What are all these planes, these special planes he's taking? By the way, what are these BMWs? By the way, if you were going to buy a whole bunch of new cars, why exactly are they BMWs? Aren't we all about Buy American right now? But do you take Chuck Grassley at his word that he's really digging into this? Is this the cracking of Kash Patel? Because Donald Trump will turn on anyone. To be honest with you, I don't think it is. I don't want to dismiss it, but I think it's a little too late. And I think it's a bit of trying to play lip service for what a lot of people are saying is a growing concern that the FBI, as a result of Donald Trump's pressure, may be up to something, interfering in our election in the midterms and potentially laying the groundwork for a narrative. It's not about necessarily stealing ballot machines or what have you, or directly influencing the outcome. It's about giving Donald Trump a narrative that allows him to save face or to justify an action if the Republicans lose in the midterm. But then can we, sorry, excuse me. No, I was going to say that for me is the motivating factor in what Donald Trump is trying to do. He's anticipating a loss, and because he's anticipating a loss, he has to prepare the narrative. That's what the January 6th fund was about. That's what the big lie is about. It's always about the perception of a loss and rewriting the history and the narrative around that loss. But then can we go back to the potential reckoning? Because Donald Trump, his own approval ratings are now in the low 30s. So whether it's Kash Patel or people in the business community have gotten to a place if you can't beat him, join him. I'm going to buy crypto. I'm going to get a side deal. I'm going to hire a fixer. That all works. It works for Donald Trump, or it's worked for Donald Trump until now. But almost everybody around him throughout history has gotten burned. So when you go back to the business community that we're talking about, do they not look at his approval ratings, approval numbers, and say, oh, my God, if Democrats win control, if Benghazi-style hearings begin, right? Remember, it was Jamie Dimon a few months ago who said, I'm not going to write a check for that ballroom because when Republicans lose power, there will be hearings and they will come for us. Do you think that anyone in the business community, because they're reading these tea leaves, are paying attention to this? Or are they doing so well and have such a direct line into Trump, they're just eating steaks and laughing?
Well, I think there's a couple things to think about, right? So the rule of law is really important for how these people run their businesses, right? And so
except the rule of law is being bent every day.
And so I think they just ceded that, right, for the first couple of years. And I think that, there is this hope that you will have, maybe it'll be 50-50 in the Senate, and maybe you'll kind of take the House, that sort of thing. But there will be the potential to push back. When I think about a Grassley, kind of going at a Kash Patel, that's an easy one, right? It's all out there, right? So, for instance, they got to pick their battles a little bit. And I go back to, remember when they appointed, and I want to say maybe it was a third year in the first administration, so as the Attorney General Barr, right? And he didn't play along. I mean, he played along for a little bit, but he didn't play along because he was kind of seeing the writing on the wall a little bit. And I think we may see a bit of that after the midterms, no matter what happens. And I think that's where you get some grown-ups back in the room, because a lot of these folks, you just talked about the grift, they want the grift. They want, you don't think Kash Patel wants to go make some money? He's got a freaking dollar sign in his, in his name. He's going to go for the money.